Let's start our discussion on Visualforce. Okay, so we'll start learn how to create interfaces using Visualforce or how to create pages using Visualforce. So as I told you earlier in the last session, also we were discussing about it. It's a markup language and it's pretty much used for designing the front ends. Okay, so it's not that much uh, used for writing logics because it's just a markup language and it does not have that option of writing too many logics inside that. Right. So that's what Visualforce is. Now for Visualforce, give me a minute. Okay. So first, what is Visualforce? I hope everyone can see my screen. What is Visualforce? So coming back to that again, it's a framework, or you can call it a program, markup language that allows developers to build sophisticated custom user interface. Okay, so this will allow you to design your custom user interfaces that can be hosted natively on force.com platform. So these pages are natively hosted on the force.com platform. So if there is an interface that has to be hosted on somewhere, right? So these can be hosted on the force.com platform. The Visualforce framework includes a tag-based markup language. So as I told you, it has a markup language, which is pretty similar to HTML. It's similar to HTML. Okay, so that's what it is. Now, before we start creating a Visualforce page, we just have to do a small thing. We have to enable the development mode. We'll have to enable the Visualforce development mode before we start creating Visualforce user interfaces or pages. Okay. What will this development mode do and why do we need to enable that? A development mode embeds a Visualforce page editor in your browser. So the moment you enable this development mode, I'll show you how to enable that. But what is the use of that? Why do we do that? This development mode embeds a page editor in your browser. All right. So this will embed a page editor in your browser that allows you to see code and preview the page at the same time. Got it? So this development mode will give you a code editor which will allow you to have a look into the page as well as in the add the code at the same time. Right? So it's just a code editor kind of a thing which gets enabled, but it has a uh, very important functionality that it allows you to look into the page while you're writing the code, right? So it's not that you have to write the complete code and then you will save it and then you'll go and get, see the output. The moment you're writing the code, you can keep on continue to save the code and parallelly you can have a look into the preview of the page also. Okay? So it's a good functionality. How do you do that? How do you enable the development mode? It's very, very simple. All that you have to do is go to My Settings, Personal, Advanced User Details, click on Edit, and then select Development Mode. Okay, let me just do it and show it to you. So any user can just go to let me log in.
That's developer org. Jeet, that's developer org.
Developer or means developer account, right?
Yes.
Okay. So usually we use developer account only. Or is it your company's account? It's your org, right?
Yes.
The developer org it works absolutely fine. It's not company's account, right?
No, it's not company's account.
Your account. No? Developer org only we will use for development.
Okay. I mean, you logged into login.salesforce.com instead of developers.salesforce.com. So I was just curious.
You can log in from here also.
Okay.
Oh, acha. You were saying that from developer.salesforce.com, why didn't I log in? Okay. You can log in from this login also, login.salesforce.com.
Okay.
You must have received the verification code on your email. Can you just send it to me? Two six one three zero. All right, so we are logged in into this. Okay, so where do you enable the development mode? As I told you, you should just go to My Settings. If you want to do it for yourself, then you should go to My Settings. If you want to do it for some other user, then you should go to Setup and then Manage Users. So let me just do it for myself. So under My Setting, you should go to Personal, and then under Personal, you have Advanced User Details. This is where you need to come, click on this and click on Edit, and development mode is enabled here by default, or you might have enabled, I do not know, but usually this is not enabled. So if you guys actually go and check your accounts, don't do it right now, just follow the screen. Later on after the session, when you do, you'll see it's not enabled. So all that you have to do is just enable the development mode. That's it, and click on save. That's it. Alright, so before you start creating a Visualforce page, please ensure that you have enabled the development mode. Alright, this development mode will give you the code editor.
Jeet,
Yep.
Jeet, can you just show how you do it for other users once?
Set up manage users,
Okay.
and then select the user for whom you want to do it. Just pick any
Okay.
user and
Okay.
click on
Then the
edit button.
rest,
Just here. So
rest is the same. Okay.
yes. Alright. So that's how the development mode needs to be enabled. Now, how do we use it, or what is the functionality of it? We'll come to that a little later. I'll show you how that development mode looks and all. That I'll come a little later. Uh, Once that part is done, now you are good to start creating your Visualforce pages. Okay, you are okay to start creating your Visualforce pages. You can create a Visualforce page without enabling the development mode also. Okay, so let me make this clear that it's not mandatory to enable the development mode to create Visualforce pages. No, you can create a Visualforce page even without enabling the development mode. The only difference will be that in case you do that, you will not have the code editor. The page can be created, so there is no difference. Right? Now, creating a Visualforce page. So there are two ways of creating a Visualforce page. Okay, I want to go with this slide. I'll just show you the demonstration. So there are two ways of creating Visualforce page. One is from the setup menu, where you just go to setup and then you go to create, and then you go to the uh, sorry, not create, develop. Under setup, develop pages. Okay, so to create a Visualforce page, all that you can do is you can just go to setup, develop pages, and here you can create a new page. All right, you can click on new. It will ask you for a label and name, and this is where you should write all your program, the code for the page. Okay, this is one way of creating a uh, Visualforce page. Okay, But we usually don't use this approach. We don't go through this route. Set up develop pages. We usually don't do this. Okay. We use another method for creating pages, which is from the URL. All that you have to do is go to the URL, delete everything after salesforce.com/ and then type apex/page name. Okay, and your page name can be anything, but it should not have special characters and spaces. Okay, so let's say my page name is A1. Okay, so you just have to make sure that this is the structure of the URL, salesforce.com/apex/A1. Press enter. Now it tries to search this Visualforce page A1, but it does not find. It says this page does not exist, right? Throws you an error. Now, just below that, it gives you an option of creating the page. All right, so you can just click on this link and create the page. All right, so that's how simple it is. Creating a Visualforce page from the URL. So there are two approaches. One, you can go from setup, but usually we do not create pages from setup. Most of the times we create pages from this thing. So I or any other developer usually does not use the setup develop pages approach until and unless it's required. Okay, you cannot create a page from the URL if development mode is not enabled. All right, again, that's one problem. If the development mode is not enabled, then you will not be able to create the page from the URL. All right, then that create page option will not be visible.
Jeet, now is there a reason why we do it that way? I mean,
It's
we have to go
convenient.
to the URL.
No, there is no reason, or there is no big logic behind that. It's more convenient. That's it.
Okay,
Fine. So
okay,
page
okay,
actually is going to be the same. So
okay,
uh, the page and the code, everything is same. So there is no logic or no definite logic or reason behind that. Okay. It's just that it's more
got you,
convenient, and it directly brings us the code editor here. Now,
got you,
the
okay,
moment we create the page here, I see the output of my page, and this is the code editor which I was talking about. So all that hype which was being created about the code editor is here. So your code is here. You can quickly check the code and make changes, and this is the preview of the page. So instead of congratulations, now it shows now congratulations, it's your new page. I want to write hello. All that I have to do is I just make the changes here on the code, click on save, and I can quickly see what it actually displays on the page. So this is a much better way of writing code rather than just writing the entire code there under setup or develop option, and then once your complete page is ready, then go and check the preview. So for that reason, this is a preferred way. Okay. Okay. Now, if you see here, if you try to understand this code, you will see that there is this apex page starting and apex page ending at line 6. Line number 2 and 5 are comments. We understand what's a comment, right? Anyone, what is a comment? What's a comment in a program?
uh, Anything for us to understand or make others understand. It's
Which
just a
is
comment. It won't show in our actual Visual Force page.
perfect. So anything that does not impact the output, it's just for our reference, right? So for the code, it does not exist for the code. It only exists for people, the end users. So line number 2 and 5 are comments. Okay, and this is the syntax for defining the comments. So anything that you want to comment out should start with this and should end with this. And this is the same syntax as used in HTML. All right. Here, if you see line number 3, this is an HTML tag. So the other day I was talking about this, that Visualforce pages can use HTML tags. So if you see, there is this HTML tag also being used here. Got it? So that's how it is. So your Visualforce page can have those comments, can have the HTML tags as well, right? And it will also have the Visualforce components and attributes. Before I come to the components and attributes and talk about that, there's one more thing that I'll need to talk, and then I'll tell you about attributes and components, what that is. So creating a Visualforce page, we have just seen, we have seen both the ways. We have seen the way of the URL, okay, where you just need to make the changes in the URL and put salesforce.com/fx/page name and press enter. And the alternate way is basically from develop pages new. Okay. Now, a Visualforce page definition consists of two primary elements. Any Visualforce page should have two primary elements. One will be the markups and the other will be controllers. Okay. A markup is what? The markup defines the user interface components. Okay. Anything that is put on the user interface, like a text, image, link, logo, table, form, button, all these are markups. Okay. So the markup defines the user interface components that should be included on the page and the way they should appear. Okay, so everything that appears on the page and how they appear on the page, that's always markup. Okay, so if you want a table, the table is markup. Now, how many columns in the table? That's also markup. Got it? This other element of the Visualforce page is a controller. What's a controller? Controller is set of instructions. Okay, set of instructions that specify what happens when a user interacts with the components specified in associated Visualforce markup. So controller is the set of instruction where it is clearly defined that what will happen when a user interacts with the page or when a user interacts with a certain component. So what happens when I load a page, what happens when I click on a link, what happens when I click on a button, what happens when I refresh the page, all these things, all these instructions are written in the controller, right? So your Visualforce page usually will have markups and controller. Controller is where all the logic will be written, markup is where all the uh, components or whatever is to be displayed that will be mentioned. Okay. Controllers also provide, if you see here, controllers also provide access to the data that should be displayed in a page. So controller also controls what data will be retrieved from the database and displayed on the page. That's also a part of controller. That's also a set of, that's also a logic or instruction, right? So controller will also control what data will come and be displayed on the page. Got it? So that's about the Visualforce markups and controllers. All right. Now, if I go back to this page, the one that we just created, out of whatever you see, which one is markup, which one is controller? Try to figure it out. On this page, what portion is markup and what portion is controller?
Apex page is markup and the output page would be controller.
What is controller? Which one? Sorry.
Controller means
Set of instructions.
set of instructions controller. Okay, then in that case, Apex page would be controller and then output would be markup.
No. Output is
There's no
markup,
controller.
that's true. There is no controller. Why? How do you know that?
There's no
Your answer is
controller.
correct, but how do you know that?
There is no controller to handle that mark component.
So currently
I
there is
mean,
no
there is no.
logic. Yeah. So currently there is no logic working on it. This page is just a static piece of page, okay, which does not have any story. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's like Shah Rukh Khan coming and standing still static. Okay. So now when he's standing still static, there is no story, nothing, no dialogue he has. So that's what it is. That's what this page is now. It's just a static page with two words, that's it. So I'm not trying to work out any logic, I'm not trying to pass any instruction to the page. And that's the reason why this page at this point of time, it's all markup. It has no controller currently. Okay. All right. Um, we'll come to the controller part a little later again. So for a visual force page, there are you know a visual force page comprises of components. In HTML, we call them tags. Remember, na, HTML tags. Like this is an HTML tag H1. In Visualforce terminology, we call them components. We don't call these tags. We call it components. Okay. So all the markups are created using these components. Okay. And Visualforce components usually start with apex colon. So here, do you see any Visualforce component on this code? Is there a Visualforce component here on this code? Visualforce component start with apex colon. Can we see any Visualforce component here?
Only page you can see.
Yeah, apex page. So this is also a component. Okay. So for everything that you want to bring on Visualforce, most of them will come through Visualforce components. All right. You have an option of writing it directly also if you don't want to define a component. You also have that option of writing it through an HTML tag also. Microphones on mute, please. You also have an option of writing it within the HTML tags, and we have the option of bringing in Visualforce component. So we have component available for almost everything. Whatever we can bring on the page, we have component for that. We have a component for creating a table, component for creating a button, component for creating a section on the page, component for creating a link, component for creating uh, you know, the data sections, everything, the input fields, the output fields, everything, right? So for almost everything, we have components. Okay. So, and a component should ideally start and it should end. So if it's an apex page component, it starts and then it ends. And whatever you want to put inside this component should be written between these two, between the start and end of the component. All right, which is pretty simple, very much logical. Now, apex page component is a must for every Visualforce page. Apex page component is a must, which you can see here right now also. And every Visualforce page should start with apex page component and it should end with apex page component. So there should not be anything after this. This should be the last thing. So this apex page component defines the boundary of the apex page or the Visualforce page. Got it? So everything that you will write should be written within this. You should not write any line of code after your apex page has got closed. Got it? For every Visualforce page, we will have the apex page component. Can we have the microphones muted, please? Ashwin, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Chit.
I'm asking you to mute the microphone, and it's the third time I'm asking the same thing.
Sorry, Chit.
I'm asking you to mute your microphone. Can you hear me now? Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. So, apex page component is going to be the starting and ending component for any Visualforce page. Now, whatever you have to do it within these two things. So, this is your boundary. Now, you want to create a button, link, image, logo, whatever you want to put it inside this. Nothing beyond this links. Okay. So, that's basically the primary component for every Visualforce page. Okay. And as we proceed in the course, we are going to use a lot of other components also. Now, apart from component, there is another thing which is called attributes. Okay. Apart from component, there is another thing which is called attribute. What is attribute? Every component has a few attributes. Okay, and this attribute will basically control the behavior of the component. Okay, every component in Salesforce has few attributes, and attribute controls the behavior of the component. Fine. For a quick example, let's say Apex page component brings in this page. Now this Apex page component has an attribute called sidebar. Okay, and that sidebar component can be used to control whether you want to display the sidebar here or not. And where do you write attribute? Inside this, in the Apex page component. See, there is an attribute called sidebar where you can make it true or false. By default, it's true. That's the reason why you see the sidebar here. You have the option of making it false. Click on save. See, the sidebar is gone. If you don't want to show the header also on the Visualforce page, you should use another component which is show header. Make it false. Got it? So now this is your uh, page. Okay, there's a Visualforce page output, and you see that there are two attributes I've used for this component. The same way, there are a lot of attributes associated with each component. Okay, and why will you use attribute? The logic is pretty simple. You'll use attributes to control the look and feel, the behavior of your component. All right. Now again, if I remove this, it will start showing the uh, page with the sidebar and the header. All right, clear on this? So
Just
these are
one
two.
question.
Tell me.
Uh, you disable that sidebar which Visual was providing us, right? Recent items
Yeah, for the page. Yes.
for the page. So can we create our own sidebar where we put our own links or other things?
Own sidebar
Just
means you don't want this
like
one.
where, yes, we don't want this one, but we want a sidebar where we provide some links to navigate other pages of our our
You can, you
programming
can.
pages or something.
You can. I mean, what you're talking about can be done in both the ways. You can actually
Yes,
customize this sidebar also. There's an option of customizing the actual sidebar also. If your requirement is just to include a few additional links and all that, this sidebar can be customized. However, if you don't want that, if you want to create a new thing of your own, that can also be created. Now this is your page, right? If I
yes,
remove the sidebar from here, all that I have to do is I just have to say sidebar equals false. So the sidebar is gone. Now this entire area is available with you, right? So instead of writing hello
yes.
here, if you create a link here or if you create a small section for a sidebar kind of a thing, so the way you want to design, you can do that, right? So both the ways it's possible. Okay.
One more thing,
Hmm.
Apex page, we see that it is a component. And what about H1 header file? Is it
That's
a component or
is
something
an
separate?
HTML tag.
This is tag only.
Tag, HTML tag. This comes from HTML language.
Uh,
Fine. So that's how the page gets constructed. That's how it's created. So now we have understood a lot of terminologies, which I actually want you to keep in mind. Visual Force page we understand. Developer mode is what you know. Um, markups, controllers, components, attributes. These four things we will use very frequently. So I just want you to understand. Markup, all that displayed on the page. Controller, the set of instructions or the set of controlling logics which controls the behavior of the page. Um, Markup and controllers, and then components, all these visual force components which are used to bring in some markup on the page, and the attributes. Every component has a few attributes, so we are going to deal frequently with the attributes also. Okay, now let me bring in a few a couple of more components here. Okay, so let's say the sidebar thing is gone. I remove it. For saving the pages, you can also do a control S. So if you have written some code and you just do a control S, that also will save the page. Okay, so there's another component which I'm going to use. It's called an epic page block. Okay, so I've started and closed this page block. I've not put anything inside it. Okay, do you see any changes on the page with this markup, with this particular component, epic page block? Do you see any changes on the output? Do you notice anything in the
There
Yes.
is
output?
a blue line on top.
Yeah, it's not a blue line only, it's just a small section. If you see, it's not just a line, it's a small section. So it creates a page block on the page. Okay, and if you want, you can put something here. This is my page. See, now whatever you put inside this component within the boundaries of this particular component, that will be displayed inside that. You created your page block. What? This is how it is. Alright, so this is the page block which got created, and now whatever you want to display inside that, you put it. Whatever you want to display outside the page block should start after this page block ends. So as simple as that. Now this page block has an attribute called title. Page block. See, so it creates a title for the page block, and then there's the actual component which comes into the page block. Got it? So that's how it is. That's how our page block component can be created. Alright. So, uh, okay. So clear on this, how we are defining components and how we are defining on attributes. We'll do a few more examples. But so far, whatever we have discussed, everyone is okay with it. Let me know if there is any question on understanding how a component or how an attribute is being used.
Jeet,
Mm-hmm.
I understood the break BR/, but what is the P?
That's a paragraph break.
Oh, okay.
That gives a longer break basically. So
Achha,
for HTML, I think the other day also I might have suggested. If not, then I'll suggest it now. For HTML tags, it will be good if you guys go to w3schools.com and try to see at least few HTML tags, the simple ones that make sense to you. Try to learn them as well. It won't take more than 1 or 2 hours in case you need that. I mean, people who have worked a lot on HTML and know the HTML tags, it's okay. People who have not done that, if you spend 1 hour, you will get to understand at least 20-25 HTML tags. Like BR is for line break, this is for paragraph break, this is for header, what is for bold, B is for bold, making the text bold, I is for making text italic. So there are two reasons why I ask you to do that. One, you know, because HTML tags are used a lot on the Visualforce page. Sometimes you might be looking into a Visualforce page and you might need to understand what a particular HTML tag is doing. Secondly, when you are designing a Visualforce page, that time also, if you know some certain HTML tags, it makes things easier for you, right? So that was okay. So now we have understood the component and the attribute part of it. Now let's bring in the controller. Let's start talking about the controllers. So far, whatever page you see, it's again, it's just a dummy page or it's just a static page. It does not have any logic defined inside it. Okay, it's just a static page which is only being displayed. That's it. But it does not have any logic. Okay, it is not displaying any data. It does not have a option to click on a certain button. So it's just a showpiece kind of a thing so far. It's not doing anything. Okay, now to put life into this, what I have to do is I have to bring in certain instructions. I'll have to start instructing the page that okay, you got to do this or you got to do this, or when I click on this you do this. So that sort of instructions need to be brought in here. So for that, what do we need? We need the other element of Visualforce page, which is the controller. So let's understand a bit about the controllers. Okay, so there are different types of controllers that we use in Salesforce. Or for your understanding, let me put it in a simpler way. When I'm talking about defining the controllers or set of instructions, there are different ways of doing that. Okay, there are different ways of bringing in the set of instructions. So first thing that you need to understand is that Salesforce has so many pages, which are already there. Salesforce already has so many pages, right? Uh, your Visualforce page is not the first page which is getting created here. They already have a big list of standard pages there in Salesforce. So out of those standard pages that you see there in Salesforce, out of that entire set of pages that you see, there must be some logic which is written to control the behavior of those pages. Yes. So there are so many standard pages, and there must have been some real good logics behind all those pages which are written. So controllers or the instructions for those pages are already existing and they are in your Salesforce, correct? And it's quite obvious because there are pages, there has to be controllers or the set of controlling logics. Salesforce allows us to leverage those controllers, those set of instructions, okay? And those are called standard controllers. All right. So the same concept like we had for standard object, custom object, the same concept comes here again. Salesforce allows you to leverage the logics or the controllers which are written for the standard pages. For their standard pages, they have created controllers and they allow you to use those controllers as well. Okay. These are called standard controller. A standard controller.
Jeet,
Mhm.
when you say standard Visualforce pages, like what are they? Like example, any example?
So I did not say standard Visualforce page. I said standard Salesforce page. Visualforce page will also always be custom because that's what you create. Standard Salesforce pages, your account has a page, contact has a page, everything is a page, right?
Okay.
So those are the standard
Yes.
Salesforce pages, okay, not standard Visualforce pages.
Okay.
Okay. So a standard controller, okay, a standard controller consists of the same functionality and logic that is used for standard Salesforce page. Okay, if you read here also. So all the Salesforce standard pages have their set of instructions or logic defined. So for account, there is a controller created. For contact pages, there is a controller created. For opportunity, there is a controller created. Got it? Salesforce allows you to leverage that controller. For every object, there is a controller, and Salesforce allows us to leverage that controller. It allows us to use that controller for our Visualforce pages, which means you don't have to write the instructions. You will just call that standard controller and you will try to use the logics. You will try to reference the logics which are already written in that. Okay. So the good thing about the standard controller is your life becomes a lot more easier. You don't have to actually write instructions. You can just leverage the one that Salesforce has written. Okay. Bad thing about that is that you will be restricted to the standard logics. You won't be able to write your own custom logics. Okay. So it has an advantage, it has a disadvantage. Advantage is that I really don't have to sit and do the entire coding on my own. I don't have to sit and write each and every bit of logic from my side. Salesforce already has done that. But for this, from the functionality point of view, I will just be restricted to the standard functionality. That's it. Correct? So that's a standard controller. Second is a standard list controller. Standard list controller is again the same concept that you are trying to use a page, the standard object controller or a custom object controller, the standard controller which has been defined for a certain object. But standard list controller can be used for displaying multiple records. A standard controller is used for displaying a single record. A standard list controller can be used for displaying multiple records of the same object. Okay, so if you want to display multiple accounts, then you will use a standard list controller. So in both these cases, in the first one and the second one, in both the cases, you are just using the standard functionalities. There is no functionality that you have written or you have defined. It's all your standard functionalities which are being used. Okay. Now comes the custom controller. What's the custom controller? A custom controller is a class written in Apex that implements all of a page's logic. Okay, don't read that. You will get confused. Before that, let me tell you. A custom controller is where you write the instructions on your own. So you are not leveraging the standard controller or the standard logics anymore. You are writing your own logics. Okay. So this is where you are writing your own logics and you are writing your own set of instructions in the custom controller. Got it? Makes sense. So now custom controller has an advantage. Advantage is that you will be able to write your own logic. You will be able to control the page the way you want. You will be able to add complex functionalities which are not there in the standard one. Disadvantage, you will have to write each bit of instruction on your own. Okay. So that's the disadvantage of a custom controller, that you will have to write from the scratch. You will have to write each and every bit of it. Okay. So that's a custom controller. And for this writing the custom controller and the instructions, we use Apex language, because Visualforce is just a markup language. It can only be used for defining the markups. It cannot be used for writing the logics. So for logics, we will use Apex. Right. So when we come to the custom controller part, we will talk about those logics thing also. How we write, and we will do that using Apex. Right. So a custom controller is a class written in Apex. It's a class that's written in Apex that implements all of a page's logics without leveraging a standard controller. So it will not leverage the standard controller, and it will have all the logics written in Apex. If you use a custom controller, you can define new navigation elements or behaviors. So if you're using a custom controller, then you can define your own functionalities, as I told you. The navigation behavior you want to control, or some element you want to control, you can do that using the custom controller. All right. And then the fourth type of controller is a controller extension. What's a controller extension? A controller extension is a class written in Apex that adds to or overrides behavior in a standard or custom controller. Okay, so controller extension is also an Apex class, or you know a program, for your understanding in a simplistic way. This can be combined with a page which already has a controller. Okay, so as the name says, extension, as the name itself says, extension. So extension is basically a class which can be used to extend the functionality of a page. So if you already have created a page which is using either a standard or custom controller, and you just want to extend some part of the functionality, then you can use an extension. Does that make sense? Simple, right? So a standard
Chief?
controller, just one second, I'll take your question. So the standard
Okay,
controller
okay, okay.
will become the primary controller of the page. So standardless controller is the primary controller. Custom controller is the primary controller. But extension you cannot use as the primary controller of the page. You can use extension on a page which already has a controller, either standard or custom. And this extension can be used to extend the functionalities of that particular page. So, sometimes it may happen that you are already using a standard controller on a page, but just a couple of methods or a few lines of code is what is required. So you, instead of you creating an entire custom controller, you might want to use the standard controller with extension. So that will actually help you in writing lesser code. So for the standard functionalities, you can just use the standard controller and use the controller extension on top of it. Okay, so these are the four types of controllers that we have, and we'll talk about each one of them one by one. Yeah, Asha, you had a question, I guess.
Yeah, Jeet, so will we do each one of them as an
Yes,
example? I mean,
yes,
okay, okay,
we'll do multiple examples on each one of them.
okay, perfect, thanks.
Fine. So, we'll start with the standard controller. So once we meet tomorrow, we'll start working with the standard controller, and we'll do a few examples on that. But I think by now I just want you to have a clear understanding of what is a component, what is an attribute, what is a controller, and what all types of controllers we have, right? So this is where till standard list controller we don't need any Apex. Visualforce itself can work with the standard logics, okay, and you don't need to involve Apex here because you're not writing any program. When we start talking about custom controller, that's where the Apex gets introduced. Right, that's where we start talking about Apex, and because we'll have to write the instructions in Apex. Right, that's how it is. Right. So that's it for today. Tomorrow, as I said, once we meet tomorrow, we'll start, doing certain examples with the standard controller, and we will see. And while doing those examples, we will learn a few more components also. Fine.